Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. It's good to have you.
Good to see you
Good
again.
to see you again.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Bill Sweitzer.
Nice to meet you, Sergio.
We had Bill on last year and just wanted to bring you back again this year. Last year we talked a lot about the canal fishery program, that flooding. Let's just touch on that for a few minutes just to refresh people.
Gotcha.
And then I want to get into some of the other stuff after that. So
Cool.
Go ahead and give us
So the main reason why we're here at the show is, the Erie Canal's been around for almost 200 years, but just recently we started to do careful releases from the Erie Canal into the Western New York tributaries, mostly Ontario Lake or Lake Ontario tributaries, and we're really kind of bolstering or enhancing the fishing there. Our tagline is more water equals more fish. The salmon runs and the brown trout runs and those already kind of world-class tributaries don't always have consistent water. So we're able to kind of maintain a base flow for those tributaries by careful releases from the Erie Canal. So we're, with this 200-year-old waterway, we're enhancing the fishing. The trout are swimming up a little bit further in the tributaries, making the fishery a little better. When there's rain events or storms, we can hold back the water a little bit. So it's we're mostly concerned about navigation on the canal, but we're actually helping an industry and our fellow, Western New York neighbors, and it's really turned out pretty great. This year was a particularly dry year, and we heard from folks on the ground that the tributaries that we don't drain in were having tough times and not a lot of fishermen, not a lot of fish. Whereas we were able to give flows to these other streams and the fishing was good. Parking lots were full.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool to run this, the waterway that connects the Great Lakes to the Hudson River, but now we're enhancing another industry. And fishing industry, of course, makes me happy because I get to bring my fishing pole to work now.
Right. Yeah. You're a big fly fish fisherman, right?
Yeah. I got closer to me. I'm from the Lake George region, Albany, Saratoga. So I would come out to Oswego Canal, which connects to the Erie Canal, and Pulaski and fish the salmon runs there. Out past Rochester were a little too far for me until, I got involved with the canal system. And now I come out and, the fishing is always a little bit better or a little bit more predictable now that we can help them with the water levels.
Yeah. And what you're doing basically is you're like simulating a storm essentially.
Yeah, we can simulate a rain event, or say like this year was a good example. Season was here, but the salmon weren't ready. They were kind of grouping around in the lake, but they weren't coming up the stream. We gave them a little mortar, we raised the gates, and simulated that salmon run. So yeah, when there's not the rain event and we need it, we can kind of simulate a rain event.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the other thing that you're doing this week is you're doing a seminar called Canals 101. Tell me a little bit about this.
So we were here last year. We're talking about the program, and we got a lot of questions about kayaking, a lot of questions about, where can you fish? And, hey, I know the Erie Canal is around, but does it really still go to Albany? Can you really do this? And the canal system is 4 canals, the Erie Canal, the Oswego Canal, the Cayuga-Seneca Canal, which connects the 2 largest Finger Lakes, and then the Champlain Canal, which connects the Hudson River to Lake Champlain. So we figured, why don't we do like a Canals 101? Start with, there's 4 of them, right? And it's 524 miles of connected waterway. When they dug it 200 years ago, it connected the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean via the Hudson River. And so we start there, and then I start going into, where the boat launches are. And yes, you can kayak, and we'll open a lock for any boat, right? We'll open a lock for 1 kayak. And then I go into fishing spots, and, we got a lot of good resources out there for folks. So it's kind of a Canals 101, real general, history lesson, and get your gear, get your fishing pole, get in your kayak, and come see us.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, when I was up here a couple years ago fishing out of Wilson, we were driving back through, and we drove through Lockport, and you see it, and it's like, it looks like it was made 200 years ago. I mean, it's got that just look to it, like this thing has been here a long time.
So the great thing about Lockport, it's funny you say that, is you really get a glimpse of Clinton's ditch era. It was the flight of 5, right? It was 5 locks in a row, like steps to get up out of the lake, over the Niagara escarpment into Lake Erie. So it's 5 locks there. Those are being rebuilt, or right next to it is the modern, quote unquote, modern day locks that are only 100 years old.
Right.
But they're with steel. and wood, and the other ones were all wood back in the day. So it's you got the historic lock district right there, a couple of museums, a great ice cream shop, good brewery right there, and you really get a glimpse of today's canal, which is really a museum in itself. It's 100 years old, but you also get the Flight of Five, which is engineering marvel back for 1825 to figure out how the heck are we need to get to that lake,
Right.
but it's 100 feet of solid rock. How are we going to do it? And we figured it out.
Gotcha. Yeah. How do locks work?
Great question.
I had the exact same question.
So it's here we are at Canals 101, right?
Here we go.
So locks work the same way they did 2,000 years ago. It's Leonardo da Vinci invention, right?
Was he a Ninja Turtle?
right. And it is it's funny when we do education programs. We make all kinds of jokes. The kids don't get them, but the teachers do.
Right.
I'm like, come on, who invented the gravity lock? He had a long beard. He painted ceilings. He was a big inventor. And I'll go, Leonardo DiCaprio? No. But gravity locks. No pumps or hydraulics. It's all the weight of the water or gravity itself. So you're always taking water from the higher elevation to fill the lock, and then when you're draining the lock, it just goes back in the lower elevation. Just drain it back into the river or lake, right? So it is underground tunnels, and the gates open. Let's say you're a kayak, right? Or let's say you're a big ship coming from Duluth, Minnesota, right? Come into the locks, they'll shut the gates behind you, then you're in the chamber. It's really like a bathtub, and there's drains underneath the water where you can't hear. So the draining is the easy part to get, right? Pull the plug actually, or we lift the valves to let the water drain back into the canal, and the boat slowly goes down. The higher we raise the valves, or the quicker we raise the valves, is the speed of the boat. All our locks are 300 feet long and 45 feet wide, so every 10 feet is about 1 million gallons of water. So let's say in Lockport, there's 2 locks right there. They're 24 and a half feet both. So it's about 50 million gallons of water we're releasing, right?
Wow.
But again, no pumps, not electricity. There's no energy being wasted. It's just opening a drain.
Mm-hmm.
The other way, this is the harder one to get. So when you're lower in a boat, you're just popping the drain, and it's like your bathtub. It's like watching a boat in the bathtub. It's just drain, and finally it's down, and the gates open, and you can go.
Okay.
Come in the other way. Gate shut behind you. We shut the valve so no more water can get in. And then we open another set of valves in the upper level of it that are connected to higher elevation. And the gravity or the weight of that water pushes down and fills up from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an elevator for boats, or a water elevator.
Reverse dominoes.
Yeah. And it's sometimes you're in there and it's such a simple concept that's hard to explain or hard to get. But when you're in there and you see where the water level was and you get drained down, the gates open, then on your way back you're like, oh, I get it now, And it's these are 100-year-old mechanisms, old brass fittings and all that, and it's a little tiny DC motor that does it too. It's all DC power press. Leonardo da Vinci, 2,000 years later. The other invention is really the miter gates. There's so much water pressure behind that.
Yeah, that's got to be a good seal.
Yeah, it's got to be a good seal. And the way those gates are mitered, the more water is, the tighter the seal it is. Really, again, simplistic, but really ingenious.
So how long does it take to fill?
So really good question. So some of our locks are only 5 or 6 feet. Even though it's only 5-6 feet change in elevation, the boat can't do it or can't go up whitewater. So we'll only lift you 5 minutes. That one takes about 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Say in Little Falls, but the middle of the state, there's a set of falls there. It's a 40-foot lift. So that one takes about 15, 20 minutes. So
pretty fast.
Yeah. And if you get a new boater in there, we'll open the valve slowly so there's not a lot of churning in that. Maybe the lock tender's talking to him to kind of talk him through it.
Yeah.
Because it is intimidating sometimes, especially if you come in and you're in a little boat and you're down 40 feet and you're looking up there.
And you're like, oh, what's going on here?
So it depends on the lift of the lock, but no more than 15 minutes.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been looking at, and I'm just a boat nerd, and been looking at doing the Great Loop.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been watching all these Great Loop videos, and I watch the guys going through the locks, and I've been watching a lot of people coming down the Mississippi. So how are those locks different than the locks that you have in New York?
Gotcha. So they're really similar. Probably the biggest difference is they're just larger. Like the locks coming out of Chicago to get into the Mississippi are just bigger than ours. But it's the same Same way. There are hydraulic locks and some different operating locks, but basically it's the same. They're going to fill that up to raise you and dump it to lower you. So they really work the exact same. Not sure specifically which locks are down there, but really the main difference is just size. They work like the Panama lock is a gravity lock. You know, it's works just like ours, only you can put humongous freighters in there, where ours are only 300 feet long.
Yeah.
So the great thing about the loop is you get that whole Mississippi experience, right? And you come around the Gulf Coast and you come up the intercoastal, you have that whole ocean experience. But then when you hit New York City, come in to New York City Harbor, then you're in the Hudson River. The Hudson Valley is beautiful, right? And you come up to just about Albany, and then you take a right on the Erie Canal, and then that's a whole different boating experience. You go from all these little communities and villages along upstate New York that would only be there today because they dug the canal 200 years ago, and you see a great part of New York State, or really even like America, that you don't see by driving the highway. You know, I tell everybody, it's like Erie Canal is the fastest way to slow down. You know, don't see it doing 75 miles on the New York State Thruway. Get off it and take the roads or get on a boat. So then you get this canal experience, and you get to Buffalo over the Welland Canal, and then you're in the Great Lakes, and that's a whole nother experience. So it's Great Loop is, you know, you need time and money, but it's a really cool thing, and we're really lucky to have the Erie Canal be a part of it.
Yeah. So tell me about that then. You see these folks coming through to do the Great Loop. What are some of your experiences with seeing some of those boats and just some of those people that are on that trip?
My first week on the job, I was in Little Falls, New York, actually, on this boat. It said Tennessee on it. I said, Tennessee? Wow, that's so cool. How'd you get here? He said, well, you know, we started this, my wife and I. And I said, no, but how'd you get here? Like, when did you take your boat out and drive it? Like, where did you start from? He said, I started from Tennessee. I said, what do you mean? The Tennessee River connects to the Mississippi. He was on the Great Loop. And I'm like, what? And he said, you know, I got the uniform on. He says, buddy, you can get from anywhere in the world, you can get to where we're standing. You know, I'm in landlocked New York, and I'm in central New York. You know? And so, you know, that was what I had to learn first, right? The thing about the Great Loop is you see people from all around the world doing it. They come in, they come up, and it is part of their trip. And they've done a little research, so they know where to stop in the canal. And we have really cool boats, really cool places from all around the world that stop in these little villages that are really kind of authentic, quaint, upstate villages that you might not see too many other places in the world, right? And they spend their money at the coffee shops or the brewery, and every village in town does some kind of canal fest, or there's always like a concert series or something like that. So there's fun stuff to do, and they spend a little money in town, and the town depends on them. And so that's why we keep the Erie Canal open. That's one of the big reasons. Those Great Loopers bring a lot of business. When we've had a couple like flooding situations where you had to do a little work in the lock, and the loopers will be stuck in a place, they don't care. They love it because they get to see more. Or they'll rent a car and go somewhere. Before the days of Uber, it was like we were like, hey, you know, can we help you out? Do you want to go someplace else? Now they're gone. You know, their boats, you know, and the repair will be fixed. They're not back yet. A couple of years ago with COVID, we had folks go into the Finger Lakes, and Cayuga and Seneca Lake, great fisheries, beautiful lakes, wineries everywhere. The loopers took kind of like a, you know, no, we're not going to go with, you know, this state restrictions or whatever it was, spend some time in the Finger Lakes. We're finding now through the Great Loop Association that more folks are planning maybe a couple more weeks on their trip to spend in the Finger Lakes, because if it wasn't for COVID, they would have never known the Erie Canal is connected to it. The cool thing about the canal, you know, talking to folks that live out in the Great Lakes that might not have come this far east is, you know, we're connected to Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, right? But also Oneida Lake, great lake to see, very different warm water fishery. The two large Finger Lakes, Cayuga and Seneca, are beautiful, rolling vineyards and vines and all that, right? And then come all the way out east through the Mohawk, and you got Lake Champlain. You can get out, get your boat out up in Ticonderoga and put it in Lake George for a couple of days into that. It's a really great lake fishing, but you're really still on a canal trip. So.
Yeah, and the cool thing, I mean, I'll sit there and watch them go through locks all day long, but no cost.
No cost. So it's free. It's New York built this waterway 200 years ago. We built it for New Yorkers, or built it for, you know, commerce back then. But we are run by the New York State Power Authority, which has 3 hydroelectric facilities on the system, and they produce electricity and sell it for money. And so that's where our funding comes from. So it's come see New York State, come go through the locks, go fishing, go kayaking. But it's a resource for us, for New Yorkers, but also for anyone else who wants to come and spend their money here too. But free all day.
Right. Yeah. Sergio, you got anything for Bill?
I'm not gonna lie to you, Chris. I think I want to take the Canals 101 course. Like, I'm totally interested in hearing all this. I'm hearing you talk about it. I'm like, okay, I got to do this. I got to sit through the seminar. I got to hear all this. This is.
Yeah,
I've
really
never been
cool.
through the locks ever before, so hearing all this is really cool because it's just more, like you're talking about. It's more than the locks. It's the little villages, the Finger Lakes. There's a lot more to it that a lot of people don't know about unless they sat there and have a good chat or did some research on their own. So I'm really intrigued about this.
Let me tell you, the another really cool thing that's going on now is, so next year is 2025. It is our 200th birthday. I keep saying 200-year-old waterway. We got another year, right? So next year, the bicentennial really is going to be this kind of culmination of celebrating. All them towns and villages that I brag about for a living, right, are all got really good plans to celebrate this, right? The World Canals Conference, Buffalo just won the bid. So in September of 2025, we're going to have the World Canals Conference there. The canal community globally will come there. A lot of really cool events coming to Buffalo Canal side. So
Yeah.
if you're interested in canals, come see the course here. Come to our booth. We've got some great folks there. But it is the time, if you're going to come see the Erie Canal, it's a big birthday next year. So come see us.
I see a lot of fireworks coming out of that canal.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. They're actually, the first trip ever on the canal system was in 1825. Governor DeWitt Clinton, after they completed it, got in a boat called the Seneca Chief. And they sailed from Buffalo to the New York Harbor with 2 big casks of Lake Erie water. And they dumped it in New York Harbor, and it was the wedding of the waters. The idea, the dream that nobody could do was completed, and he married the waters, right? So in October of 2025, from Buffalo, they've rebuilt the boat. They've got a replica boat in the Buffalo Maritime Center.
That's going to be
Canal
great
side.
to see.
It's almost finished. They're going to launch it this year, but they're going to recreate the trip. So that boat coming from town to town, maybe trolling on the way a little bit, is going to be a really cool thing in the fall of next year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
lots of fun stuff going on.
Sounds
Yeah, I love the idea of just hanging out in the Finger Lakes, and I've been watching these great loop videos, and like you said, these guys are coming down the Mississippi, and they're like, oh, we're in the Kentucky Lakes now. We're gonna hang out here for 2-3 weeks. These people are not in a hurry when they're coming through. But the other thing is, and we've been talking about the fun part of it, but it's a big time commerce thing, and you're dealing with ships coming through that are in a hurry, that are on business trips. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so we get a lot of folks coming through, especially in the early season, with boats that are purchasing the Great Lakes coming down, or people delivering boats and that. We still do have a pretty good amount of commercial shipping on the system itself. A lot of stone coming out of the quarries in the Adirondacks come down Lake Champlain. The Navy does a lot of business. The Navy has a facility in, I believe, Seneca Lake. So they've had a lot of things being shipped on the canal that way. General Electric, GE still has a plant in Schenectady. A lot of the big cooling stuff they can't put on a train or put on a road, we'll ship it. A few years ago, Rochester Brewery, Genesee Brewery, redid their tanks, and the beer tanks floated out by barge. It's a pretty big event. People were saying, sitting at watching locks. We had crowds at each of our locks as these beer tanks would come in, and they double locked them, which is a whole thing. You have the tugboat push it in, then you hand crank the next one in so you can lock 2 barges at the same time. It was a pretty cool thing. So there is a lot of shipping still going on, and with the shipping and with kind of the utility of the canal, one of the things we're doing with this 200th birthday is we're commemorating the history and talking about what it did for America, what it did for New York State and all that, connected Great Lakes to the Atlantic and commerce started. But also we're saying, what can we do for the next century? Like what commercial shipping can we do? You can put 77 tractor trailers on one barge, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So it's environmentally friendly. It's just time sensitive. You're not going to be shipping, frozen fish, right? But if it's a time-sensitive cargo, recyclable cargo, we're looking into some things to kind of increase that, but yet stay
eco-friendly.
Eco-friendly, exactly. So commercial ship is still there. There's never really the canal is so long, and the locks are sometimes they're close to each other, sometimes they're farther away. You don't really get traffic, or we're very good about safety. notice to mariners through an app and text and emails that, like, if there's a barge coming down or somebody that's quote unquote in a hurry, he's not going to bother kayakers or a small vessel or a fisherman or somebody who's, wants to take their time.
Very good. Bill, we really appreciate you stopping by. Fun talking to you as always.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time, and
I'm
thanks
really
for coming
glad
by.
that, I get paid to talk about the Erie Canal. It's great to hear the feedback from the fishermen and local folks here. So really, thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you.